Lord, we're thankful for the privilege of having Greek class today. We pray you'd strengthen the physical students, help them as we prepare for after this, the test over chapters 8 and 9. We ask that you would also help the video students. We know that your word is very glorious and wonderful, and I pray that you would just help everyone that is watching this video to be better prepared, to study it, learn it, love it, teach it, and preach it. We pray this for Jesus' sake. Amen. Okay, well, let's go ahead and sing Revelation 4:11 and 5:12 and 13. So let's begin singing the worthiness of the Lamb to receive honor and power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing forever and ever. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah. So Oxios, worthy thou art, O Lord, to receive the glory and the honor and the power, because you have created all, and through the will of you they are and were created. Worthy is the Lamb, the being slain, the Lamb that was slain, to receive the honor and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. Ace tu sionos ton ionon is into the ages of ages, which means forever and ever. Oxios e Kyrie labenten doxon kai ten timen kai ten dunamen hati su etisos ta panta kai dia ta thelemasu esi kai ectis theson oxion estit arneon ta es phagmenon labain ten dunamen kai pluton kai sophion kai iskun kai timain kai doxon kai eulogion eis tu sionos ton ionon. Amen. All right, you may be seated. What a blessing that is. Maybe we'll be singing it in Greek in the future. All right, you can go ahead and turn to we're going to be going through chapters 8 and 9 here. And that will be fantastic. Okay, so we have an exegetical insight at the beginning of chapter 8. So this chapter is about prepositions and about eimi, to be. So we have the church discipline guy, where the guy is handed over to Satan, that the flesh might be destroyed in the time of the Lord Jesus. Let's go to page 55. All right, so here he is. Thankfully, in a Bible-believing, practicing Baptist church, we do still practice church discipline. He says in here that in the majority of our congregations, there is little or no formal church discipline of any kind. That's a big problem. Big problem. Now, he says, when he's talking about this here, he says that in the NIV, it looks like it's not clear what's going on, but the first purpose is, let's get the Greek up here. Either somebody's really hungry or the coffee machine is going. A little bit of both, yeah, it's possible. So, to deliver such a one, thus the one, such a one, to Satan, ace, into, alathron, destruction, taste sarkos, destruction of the flesh, hina, in order that, tanuma, the spirit, sothe, may be saved, and te hemera, to kuriou, in the day of Christ Jesus. All right? And so he says, so we can see that he's delivered to Satan with this destruction of the flesh taking place, and the purpose is that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord Jesus. He says the NIV is not that clear about it, which would show a problem with the NIV. And he says that in the New Testament, church discipline is exclusively remedial and never punitive or vengeful. Never for the purpose of punishing, but just for rehabilitation. Is that true? What do you think?
Probably not vengeful, but punitive it should be.
Yeah, it's not. It certainly is remedial. Okay, no doubt it's to bring you back. It's not exclusively remedial because it's for the glory of God, right? That's actually the purpose for why we're doing even more than these other things. And it does bring some, there is an element of punishment as well. Obviously, it's done out of love for God, love for the person. So, anyway, some useful thoughts on there, but it is certainly remedial to the glory of God, and also it does, lovingly, it is an element of chastisement, punishment, you could say, maybe. But we want the spirit to be saved, like it says in that text. Okay, so that's the exegetical insight. All right. One reason I think many evangelicals don't practice church discipline is they have such a high percentage of them that are unconverted that if they had to discipline all the unsafe people out, you wouldn't have a mega church anymore. You'd have like the 5 people that are actually saved, whatever, and it would, your whole philosophy of ministry would have to be different. You'd have to actually do what the Bible said to get to grow instead of just doing what you want. That wouldn't work. That'd be a problem. All right, so chapter 8 here. This chapter is about prepositions. Prepositions are little words like over, under, and through that define the relationship between two words. The word following the preposition is called the object of the preposition. The meaning of a preposition can change. We have dependent clauses in eimi and predicate nominatives. That's the overview on page 56 here of chapter 8. So prepositions in eimi, it's not too bad. Not too bad. So, preposition, they're not always short, but they usually are, and they show the relationship between two other words. So, rabbit in a rabbit hole. What can a rabbit do with its rabbit hole? It can have babies in it. Okay, it can have babies in the rabbit hole, yes. That was not what I was looking for necessarily. No, you need more than one rabbit, actually, for that to take place. So this is only one rabbit. Only one rabbit in the hole. So
it's no longer a rabbit hole, it's a rabbit commune.
We had a cat get into the rabbit hole.
A rabbit commune?
We're freaked out about
A cat in a rabbit hole. I guess a rabbit could have a cat come in.
There are babies in a rabbit hole.
Oh, okay. Oop, that's the end of the rabbit baby thing. Yeah.
Kids are
So, rabbits are good at math, especially multiplication. But anyway, so rabbits can, a rabbit could be in its hole, could be on the hole, could be under the hole, could go around the hole. Words like those are prepositions, the in, under, on. So basically, if you think of the kind of stuff that rabbits can do with its hole that's describing the relationship to the hole, you've got some prepositions there. So you can come out of the hole, lie on the hole, dig beneath the hole, play above the hole, in the field, stuff like that. All right. So many prepositions are spatial, like the ones for the rabbit in the hole. And there are also ones that are temporal, and there are ones that are instrumental. So different kinds of relationships are expressed by prepositions. And the word, this is 8.1, basically. And the word following the preposition is called the object of the preposition. It's the word the preposition is referring to. So rabbit hole was the object of various prepositions in the sentences we were referring to. In the sentence, I will put my foot under the chair. What's the preposition? What is the object of the preposition?
Chair is the object, and the preposition is under.
Good. Chair is the object, preposition is under. Good. If I will put sermon notes in my Bible, then the preposition should be in, and the object should be Bible. So it's going in the Bible. Sometimes you've got modifiers. If I put my notes in my leather KJV Bible, or my small soul-winning Bible, the whole unit would be a prepositional phrase. So the preposition, its object, and any other modifiers. A phrase is a group of words that has some meaning, but does not contain both a subject and a verb. So it doesn't have subject and a verb, it's a phrase. If it does, then you got something else here. And a prepositional phrase is the most common type of phrase that we see going on. All right, so that's 8.1. 8.2. Another term in English, a predicate nominative. Predicate nominative. We tend to ignore them in colloquial English today, so making the issue a little bit complicated, but they're still correct grammar. All right? So a predicate nominative is found in conjunction with the verb to be. And of course, to be can have many other forms: am, is, are, was, were. And many verbs describe an action. The action moves through the verb to the direct object. Right? And so with that type of verb, where you have an action verb go with a direct object, the direct object is in what case? In Greek and in English.
Wait, what was the question?
In Greek, if you have a verb that does, it's an action verb, and it has an object, what case is the object in? In English, it's the objective case for the object. Greek?
Nominative.
No, not in the nominative. Subject is in the nominative. Subject and a verb, and the verb is doing something to this word. Accusative. Yeah, accusative. So if many verbs, you've got a subject, you've got a verb, you've got something in the accusative case, right? But to be is not that kind of verb. To be is a state of verb. It gives you a state of being. So it doesn't give you an action. So to be is kind of like, to be predicates something about a subject. It's like drawing an equal sign. Okay? So-and-so equal sign so-and-so. So if you call me on the phone, I know people don't call on phones anymore. They text on them. They use the internet on them. They use apps on them. They don't call on them. But let's say you were very old-fashioned and you called on your phone. And I'm home and I answer. I would say, it is I. If you ask, could I speak to Thomas Ross? Yeah, it is I. Okay. Technically, I would not say it is me, because me is actually the objective or accusative case. Instead, you'd have it followed by the stative verb is. There's no action in the verb, so it's not followed by direct object, but by a predicate nominative. And so it'd be it is I in the same. So is the subjective case. Or nominative case, the word following the is would be in the subjective case in English, the nominative case in Greek. So with a predicate nominative, it's in the predicate, it's not in the subject, it's the predicate, but it's still nominative. It's not accusative anymore. So it's a predicate nominative. So it is I. So it equals I. All right? And so you can break a sentence, as hopefully you recall, into two major parts. The part with the subject and its modifiers, and then the part, you have the verb, and all that follows the verb. All right? And that's the predicate. So this predicate is a predicate nominative, has a nominative in the predicate. So if you need to think about what a predicate nominative is, think of it as I. And a predicate nominative is something that happens with a verb is or to be, and it draws an equal sign between the subject and the verb, word that follows it. The word can't be accusative because it's not receiving an action of the verb. The verb is not describing an action. So the object can't be receiving an action because the verb isn't giving you any action. It's a state of being. So subjective case in English, after the is or the were or whatever. Nominative case in Greek. So that's a predicate nominative. Comments, questions about predicate nominatives? Did you, in high school or college, did you ever have to take grammar?
Yeah.
You did? High school, good for you. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we didn't learn grammar very well in English. Well, it was okay, but oftentimes in a state school, they don't teach you grammar. Socialism, yes. Grammar, no. But socialism, yes.
Yeah, I had one teacher who was adamant that we learn grammar.
Oh, good.
He didn't care that it wasn't part of the curriculum. So.
Isn't that sad? That wasn't part of the curriculum?
Yeah.
Had to learn it, but it wasn't part of the curriculum. Yeah. Well, you can be thankful you had a teacher like that.
Yep.
Okay, let's go back to Greek and get into the prepositions. Into prepositions? Okay. Well. All right, so Greek prepositions in case. Oh, this was the slide for the predicate nominative. Regular verb has a direct object, stative verb, it is I, something like that. Right. So Greek prepositions in case. Some prepositions take one case, like apa, always is followed by the genitive case. Pros is always followed by accusative case. Other prepositions can take two cases or even three cases. Now, Greek prepositions act a lot like English prepositions except for one thing. So there's a group of prepositions whose objects will always be the same case. All right, that's the apa and the pros here, this example. Now, no preposition has an object in the nominative case. So they can be followed by a genitive, some of them take an accusative, some of them take a dative, none of them take a nominative. All right, so a nominative is never the object of a preposition. Which actually, by the way, in the critical text of the book of Revelation, from he who is and was and is to come, the critical text has the object of a preposition in the nominative, and it's just bad grammar. So the received text doesn't. So, okay. So anyway, so this is true, that none of them take the nominative, because the critical text is wrong in Revelation. Some prepositions, their object is always genitive, some is always dative, some always accusative. Those are the easier ones to memorize. Preposition plus genitive or whatever. So apa always means away from. Its object is always genitive. Pros always means to, towards, or with. Its object is always accusative. And when you memorize these words, memorize the preposition plus the case equals so-and-so. So don't just memorize apa means away from. Memorize apa plus the genitive means away from. That's what you want to do with all prepositions. Especially that helps you when you get to meta. So meta plus the genitive means with. Meta plus the accusative means after. And you want to memorize it as meta plus genitive, meta plus accusative. Because otherwise you just think meta means with/after. Well, it's not with/after. It depends whether it's taking a genitive or an accusative. Which, by the way, is an illustration of some of the limitations, if you don't know Greek, of just doing like a Strong's number word study search. Like, let's say you don't know Greek at all, and you look at meta. You probably don't realize that depending on the next word, whether it's genitive or accusative, that changes the meaning. You would just say, okay, meta can mean with or after, and I just kind of pick which one I want. Okay, but you don't get to do that. It is dependent on the case that follows. So, some prepositions take two cases, like meta. If the object of meta is genitive, it means with. Object of meta is accusative, means after. So that's actually where Greek prepositions are different than English ones. English prepositions don't do this different case thing with different meaning thing. Other than that, Greek prepositions are very similar to English prepositions. I'll give you an example of where this makes a significant difference. Hebrews 1:2 here. So here, verse 1, so God in sundry times, divers manners, spake in time past unto the fathers by his prophets, and ep eskaton ton hemeron, and in or upon the last days, the last of the days, upon these last days, he spoke, God spoke to us, and huio, in or by his son, han, etheka, whom he appointed, kleronomon, heir, ponton, of all things, through whom, dihu, kai, also, so through whom also tous ionos, the worlds, epoiesin, he made, through whom also he made the worlds, or by whom also he made the worlds. Right? So here we have the Greek preposition dia. It has that, the alpha's gone because of the vowel and the rough breath on the who. So dia, by or through. And who is what case? If you don't know the word who, it's okay because it tells you right at the bottom of the screen. What case is who? Genitive. Okay, so this is dia plus a genitive. And dia plus a genitive means by or through. And dia plus the accusative can mean because of, but not dia plus the genitive. Now, oneness Pentecostals say that Jesus is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And they say the term Son only refers to Christ in his incarnation, in his humanity. Okay? So they say that he was not the Son, there was no Son of God before the incarnation, which is, heresy, false doctrine, abominable, very wicked. Now, this text says that the Father, by his Son, made the worlds, showing that the Son existed before the creation. So before creation, you had both the Father and the Son. They both existed. They're distinct, even though they're one God, of course. So there's two members of the Godhead here mentioned, and the Father, by the Son, made the worlds. Okay, so that's the end of oneness Pentecostalism. So oneness Pentecostalism, no more oneness Pentecostalism right here. That's the end of that. Well, what do? Well, at least some of them, they make the claim that, well, this shouldn't say by the Son the worlds were made. It should say because of the Son. So God was thinking about how there was going to be this incarnation, and so because of the incarnation, he made the worlds. And dia can mean because of. See, it says right there, right at the bottom, preposition, through or because of. So therefore, this should say because of the Son he made the worlds, not by the Son he made the worlds. So therefore, we can still be oneness Pentecostals and go blah, 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 and put hands on people and save them supposedly by that. So what do you think of that? Can it be because of? No. Why? Oh, genitive, yeah. Yeah, it's followed by the genitive. Yeah, so that you actually can't do that. You just can't say it's because of. It's not true. But, most oneness Pentecostals don't know Greek, or they know how to maybe look up a word in Strong's, and they don't realize that. And so they're talking to their buddy or whatever. He doesn't know Greek either, and you just tell him whatever, and they believe it. But the fact is, you just can't do that. So this is because of the Son is clearly existing here, and by the Son, the Father made the world. So, unfortunately, for oneness Pentecostals, there is no possibility of their modalism in this passage. You've got two distinct persons in the Godhead. Oh, by the way, some of them object to the word person, saying that the Godhead is different persons. Now, person doesn't mean there's three gods, okay, obviously. But verse 3 says that the Son is the brightness of the Father's person, the hypostasis of the Father. So there's actually a biblical basis for saying that the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit are distinct persons. There's a biblical justification for that word, person or hypostasis, even though, of course, you need to define it carefully. It's not tritheism, and it's not modalism. All right. So, illustration of how this is useful. So, some prepositions can take one case, some can take two, some can take three. And that's just how it goes. When you memorize prepositions, make flashcards for the different prepositions. You would want the flashcard to say, a paw plus the genitive is away from, or something like that. If a preposition has two cases, you could make one flashcard that says meta plus the genitive on one side and meta plus accusative, and you have both for each on the other side. Or you can have a meta plus genitive flashcard and a meta plus accusative flashcard. But you don't want to just have a meta flashcard and not make that distinction between the cases. You almost need to treat them as if the different cases make it a different word. It's obviously not a different word, but you kind of are treating it that way for the purpose of memorization. And I certainly hope you're making flashcards. The textbook has a diagram, which we will get to, that gives you a number of meanings of a lot of prepositions. Let's see if I have that here. This doesn't give you the sense of all the prepositions, but it's a useful diagram. It's worth memorizing as a diagram. It kind of gives you many of the senses of prepositions, and when you can visualize things, it helps many people to learn. It helped Einstein to visualize relativity. So if it helped Einstein, it can help you. Right? Okay. Keywords. What was the key word with the genitive case? Of. Of is the key word with the genitive. Good. Excuse me, not good. Yuge, right? Yuge. So, now, with prepositions, you do not use keywords in their objects. If you see apa theou, apa is from, you don't say apa is the genitive, theou is the object. So apa plus the genitive is away from God. So this is not good, of course. It doesn't mean away from of God. Okay? So even though the preposition is genitive, you don't use the keywords when words are objects of prepositions. They just mean whatever the preposition means with that case. Okay? So that's important. So don't worry about keywords when you are talking about objects of prepositions. Something else with prepositions, talked about 8.6 here. Prepositions are not inflected, so they don't change their form based on meaning or function. So that's kind of nice. In other words, a pa doesn't get an ending depending on this or that. It's always just what it is. But if a preposition ends in a vowel, it's possible the end of the preposition is modified. So in English, we don't say a apple, we say an apple. And you know what's worse than finding a worm in your apple, right? Half a worm. So, anyway, so you say an apple, and that helps with pronunciation, right? And sticking that little n on there. And that's what happens in Greek with the prepositions. If the preposition ends in a vowel, and the next word begins with a vowel, then the last vowel on the preposition can drop off. This is called elision. Can you all say elision? Elision, okay? And it's marked with an elision marker, which looks like an apostrophe. So you can see at the bottom there, meta auton. Since you have the two alphas, that becomes met auton. Okay? So and that little apostrophe is an elision marker, because meta auton gives that unnatural pause. Now, the other thing that can happen with some prepositions is called aspiration. And that's not if you have a headache. Okay, you aspirate yourself, right? If you take the preposition meta and it's followed by hemon, the alpha would drop out because the first letter of hemon is an eta, it's a vowel. Then you'd have met hemon, but that's still kind of hard to say, met hemon. So the tau aspirates to a theta, okay? And so we get meth hemon. So meth hemon is meta hemon. So the rule is if you have a preposition ending with a vowel, followed by a word beginning with a vowel, then the final vowel can drop. That's elision. Meta auton going to met auton. Meta to met. If the next word begins both with a vowel and a rough breath mark, like with hemon, then the tau can go to a theta here. That would be the aspiration. And the vocabulary tells you if you've got this going on. So it's kind of nice. Now the elision and the aspiration don't change the meaning at all. Just pronunciation. And since the vocabulary tells you, you don't need to get super worried about what it's doing with it. So for example, if you take a look at the vocabulary for chapter 8, on meta, it says meta, then it says met and meth afterwards. That's telling you you've got the elision and the aspiration. And it tells you that when meta is followed by a word beginning with a vowel, the alpha drops out to metau2. The next word begins with a vowel and a rough breathing, it becomes meth. Okay. And then also on hupa, it tells you that hupa can become hoop or hoof. So hupa followed by a word beginning with a vowel becomes hoop. Hoopau2. With a vowel and a rough breather, it becomes hoof. Hoof, hemas. All right, so that's just page 62. So there you've got your elision and your aspiration. Which one's the elision? Which one's the aspiration on here? Good. Elision is hoop. Aspiration is hoof. Now, of course, if you had a horse's hoof, you might need some aspiration if it knocked into you. With aspirin, definitely cause a headache if you get a hoof in your head. All right. So that's it for the prepositions. Horse is a sous in Greek. So, oh, that's Hebrew, isn't it? Sous. Hippos. Hippos is Greek. Sous is Hebrew. It's not a sous. It's a hippos. Oh, man. Now imagine if I learned Spanish. I was trying to do this in Spanish. Think about how that would be really complicated. I'd be confusing all these different languages. So, man. All right. So that's 8.7. When you're memorizing prepositions, think about it like this. Blank with a blank means blank. So N with a dative means in. Okay? Meta plus the accusative means whatever. Something like that. And so if you have the phrase apa theou, and I ask you to explain apa, you wouldn't just say apa means away from. You'd say apa with the genitive means away from. Getting into this habit will help you when you have prepositions to take multiple cases. So if you see meta with a genitive, you would say meta with a genitive means with. If you saw with accusative, you'd think meta with accusative means after. Now if we flip that and we were going other direction with the languages, and I ask you, you have apa theou, and I say, why is theou in the genitive? You would say, theou is in the genitive because it is the object of the preposition apa that takes the genitive. So this first phrase, blank with a blank means blank, that's if you are explaining, apa theou, it would be the apa plus the genitive means away from. And you flip it the other way, why is theou the object in its case? You would say, theou is in the genitive because it's the object of the preposition apa that takes the genitive. So if you think with these formulas, it helps you with those prepositions. And try to employ those. I'm not going to punish you if you say it a little bit different or something, but it's a useful way to kind of keep that in your head. Any comments, questions on prepositions? All right. Let's go to dependent clauses. That's, if you're at the North Pole, the big fat guy in the red, his little children, those are the dependent clauses. So, that's not what we're talking about. All right, dependent clauses. That's a unit of words, a clause is a unit of words with a subject and a verb. Okay? There's not a subject and a verb, it's not a clause, it's a what? Phrase. Good. There's not both, it's a phrase, you got both, it's a clause. All right? So, sand is not real, of course. And if he were real, he couldn't get to everybody's house, he'd burn up in the atmosphere. He couldn't even get to all the rich first world people's children, which he seems to go to them more frequently anyway. So, the sand tracker on Google is fake news, I'm sorry. So you actually see they have a tracker. They track how many presents given out. So anyway. So a clause is a unit of words that has a subject and a verb. This is in the real world here. Children should not be told sand is real. It's lying to them. So, and a clause will have a meaning that it will stick together. Okay, so it'll kind of one unit. And if it doesn't have both a subject and a verb, it's a phrase. We have two types of clauses. Independent clauses, dependent clauses. An independent one is its own sentence. It can stand on its own. If I say, my name is Thomas, that is an independent clause. It's its own sentence, makes sense, we're good. I can say, I live in Mukwonago. That makes sense. It's its own sentence. I can make that a compound sentence. My name is Thomas, and I live in Mukwonago. There you have two independent clauses. We have a subject, I, a verb, live. It can stand on its own. My name is Thomas, and I live in Mukwonago. Then there are dependent clauses. They still have a subject and a verb, but they cannot stand on their own. They're dependent. They need something else. Anyway, the distinction between dependent and independent clauses is very important when you break Greek sentences into pieces and make sense of them. A very common dependent clause is called a relative clause. We'll learn that in chapter 14. That's something like the man who is sitting by the whiteboard is my Greek teacher. Who is sitting by the whiteboard would be a dependent clause. Who is a relative pronoun. Who is sitting by the whiteboard is that dependent clause. You can't just say who is sitting by the whiteboard unless it's a question, which is something else. But we're not in chapter 14 right now. we're just saying that a clause that can't stand on its own is a dependent clause. One that can stand on its own is an independent clause. So why are we talking about these clauses right now? Well, the reason we're doing it is we learned that the word haughty in a previous chapter means, what does haughty mean?
That.
Good. That since or because. That since or because. But don't be proud that you know what haughty is. Okay? So, haughty is that since or because. We're going to learn the word hina in this chapter. Hina means in order that or simply that. Both haughty and hina introduce dependent clauses in Greek. So when you see a haughty or a hina, you'll have a clause after it. All right? And that clause won't be an independent clause, can't stand on its own. It'll be a dependent clause. So in English, you could not say as its own sentence, because I am the teacher. There was something missing there. And in Greek here, for that because would be a haughty. Okay, haughty, I am the teacher. All right? Similarly with the hina, or in order that, you couldn't just have a sentence, in order that I learn Hebrew. There's something missing there. It's a dependent clause. That would be a hina. In order that would be the hina. So, it doesn't make complete sense on its own. So haughty and hina always introduce dependent clauses. And because haughty and hina clauses are dependent clauses, they will never contain the main verb in its sentence. A dependent clause can never have the main verb. So if you're translating and you find a verb, it's good, found a verb, but it's in a haughty or a hina clause, it's not going to be the main verb. Don't assume it's the main verb. It won't be, because the main verb can't be in the dependent clause. It has to be in the independent. So if you come to a haughty or a hina clause, maybe you might draw a line at the beginning of the clause, find the end of the clause, draw another line, separate that clause out, kind of pull out the dependent clause, and you'll see that dependent clause is its own unit of meaning, and translate it as a unit of meaning, and then see how that ties into the rest of the sentence. So haughty and hina clauses, dependent clauses, don't introduce the main verb. All right, halftime review here, page 58. So it has been said that a preposition is anything a rabbit can do with its home. You can go in the hole, around the hole, dig under the hole, stuff like that. Prepositional phrase is the preposition and its object with the modifiers. That's the prepositional phrase. Prepositions govern the case of their object, so keywords are not used. Prepositions are not inflected. So yay for that. But the ending can change. The aspiration or the elision. And a dependent clause will not contain the main verb of a sentence. Okay, anything, comments, questions about that? All right. Let's go to eimi, to be. I am, you are. How common is the verb to be in English? Very. Very common. It is very common, right? Same thing in Greek, right? So, why are we learning a verb here? I mean, we're not learning verbs yet. And just like in English, typically the more common something is, the more likely it is to be irregular. All right? So, English verb to be is not it has these weird forms. I am, you are, he is, changes. Greek too, it has irregular forms. And so why are we talking about the verb here? Well, Mounce was finding great sentences for the workbook, but he couldn't use them because they had eimi in them. And so he put eimi in now so there could be better exercises in the workbook. And it also doesn't hurt as a teaching method to put such a common verb early to kind of wet your taste. I guess your teeth can get wet if you drink water. Hudar. So anyway, common verb very early doesn't hurt. And then when we get to chapter 15, verbs will not be completely new. Chapter 15 or the rapture, whichever happens first. To review a few matters about verbs that have been hinted at earlier, we have 3 grammatical persons in language. Guess what they're called? First, second, and third person. Yeah, there are 3 of them. First one, second, third. First person is me. Yeah, the one speaking. I or we. Well, actually it's not. Well, I or me. Yeah, it could be me, yeah. So first person's I or we. Okay, me, myself, and I. Second person is the one spoken to. You. Or in the King James also, thee, thou, thy. Ye or you. Third person is that which is spoken about. Or in other words, it's everything else. If it's not first person, it's not second person, it's third person. So everything else, third person. He, she, it, they, boat, class, book, students, all that is third person. Now, verbs and their subjects don't get in arguments. They're very agreeable. Okay? Verbs need to agree with their subjects. Is that right? Yes, it is. So, what that means is that verbs have a linkage to help you identify which noun is doing the action of the verb. In English, this is done by word order. So, if you see a verb, you look at a noun or something in front of the verb, noun or pronoun, and that's how you know who or what's doing the action of the verb. See the verb? There's an I in front of it. There's a horse in front of it. Well, that's the subject, whatever's right in front of it. So the word order does it. Greek has a more flexible word order. So word order doesn't always tell you. Subjects can be in lots of places. They have more freedom. So how do we know? What's the link between the subject and the verb? Well, several things. First, the subject is always nominative case. So that's a link with that in the verb. Second linkage is agreement. The verb agrees with the subject in person and number. So if the subject is first person, the verb indicates that the subject is first person. If the subject is plural, the verb indicates the subject is plural. So there's that connection. There's agreement in person and number, and then its subject is nominative. How does the verb show this agreement in person and number? It has a stem. A verb has a stem. That's the basic meaning. And then you put suffixes on the end of the verb. Those suffixes are called personal endings. The personal endings are what provide the linkage to the subject. So when you see a verb, and you see a word in the nominative, it may or may not be the subject. You'll find the verb, you'll look at the ending of the verb, and say, is this a first, second, or third person singular ending, or is it a first, second, or third person plural ending on the verb? And that will be your linkage, in addition to the subject being nominative, to help you identify the subject of the verb. So that's what agreement is. You got a stem, you stick personal endings on the stem, and that helps you identify, that gives you the form of the verb itself, and it also helps you know what noun or pronoun is the subject.
Gender fits in there too.
Well, I got a question. Does gender fit in there? Verbs don't change their form based on gender. So let's say the forms of eimi. Here are the forms of eimi. Eimi, e, estin, or esti, esmen, este, ac, or asin. So that's I am, thou art, he, she, or it is, we are, ye are, they are. Whether the they or the you is a bunch of women, a bunch of men, a bunch of neutered ones, whatever they are, that doesn't change the form of the verb. So the gender does not change the form of the verb, but the person and the number do. Good question.
So verbs don't have genders.
Yeah, verbs do not have genders. No. Verbs are just, like, S-men is we are, regardless of whether the we is any gender. Masculine, feminine, or neuter, it's always going to be S-men. It's a good question. Let's look at the BBG professor on page 59. He said before that you can call people kuria or kuria to be respectful, like sir. I mentioned that on page 57. But he says you want to have a name in Greek. Nai? Yes. Everyone needs a name. Nai? Yes. And here are some. You want more? You can have more. So, ha Petros, ha Jakobos, ha Ioannes. Now mine is easy. Mine is actually in the Bible. And when you have homework, you have ladies, hey Elizabeth, hey Esther, hey Eunice. Do you know what the most common first century Jewish name was for ladies at the time Christ was born? Mary, yeah. So it's not really that surprising that Christ's mother was named Mary, because that was the most common name. So maybe if you're Catholic, because Mary is a godly lady, but there's only one of her, maybe the other Marys can answer your prayers. Like if you pray to Mary, there's lots of Marys in heaven, so maybe some of the other ones can like fill in. If you can't quite get to the one that you really are trying to get to. So, yeah. No, I don't think it works that way, but at least it would help out. Because, I mean, how is the one Mary? How is she going to even hear everybody? No. You get a busy signal. It'd be like it's worse than trying to call the IRS, trying to get through to Mary. So, yeah, you need some rosaries. But think about how many people praying the rosary. A busy signal on the rosary. Yeah. Fortunately, maybe you get a demon to answer. So you can write your name on tests in Greek if you want to, and that would be kind of a neat thing to do. My name is in the Greek New Testament, so that's kind of a nice thing. It's Thomas. So it's right there in John 20:28. So that would be Ha Thomas. Ha Thomas. And my last name is not, though. So Ross is not in there, but maybe it would be this. So Ross, I don't want to put a smooth breath mark on there. So, or, since my father's name is Thomas too, I could say Thomas Hahuios Thoma. Thomas, son of Thomas. So, do that. Like John 1:42, where it says, you are Simon, the son of Jonah. Sue Simon Hahuiasiona. Thoma is the genitive of Thomas. There's a phrase in Athanasius' Orations against the Arians. I could search for this on my Concordance Bible software. It says, learn from Thomas. So that's good. We're for that. That's parathoma mathe. So, how would you say your name in Greek? Or here, you know what? Anybody want to write them on the board? Try? Not really? Okay. Shy. Don't be shy. Okay. If one, okay, you want to do it? Okay. Go ahead. You write your name on the board. Write it on a piece of paper at least. Ha. That's a good start, yeah. Ha-he'ath. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Ha-he'ath. He'ath. All right. All right.
So why do we have Thomas is spelled with TH, but why is it pronounced T-thros?
Why is Thomas a ta, not a tha, Thomas, for us? That's a good question. I mean, sometimes pronunciation changes in different languages. Like, Thomas is spelled Thomas. English, actually, as we mentioned, is more irregular than Greek. It has all these weird things. So, I think Timotheus is even in the Bible,
Yeah.
right? Do you know what verse it is? You find
No.
probably Let me see. Let's see 1 Timothy 1:1.
Well, yes.
Yeah. Let's see.
1:1.
Let's see. 1 Timothy 1:1. Unto Timothy, Timotheo. So there we are. Let me put this back up. Yeah, 1 Timothy 1:2, you have Timotheo, that's the dative form. But on the bottom you can see the lexical form is Timotheos. So ha Timotheos, right there. It's a good name. Time is honor, theos is God. So that's a good name. Honoring God. So Timotheos.
That's what it means, honor God.
I think so. Let's see. Timotheos. Let's see, beat it here. Doesn't tell you right there.
Who's Titus?
Time is like price or value, honor, reverence. So either probably like honoring God or honored by God. All right, so we have our names there. So Timotheos and Heoth. And I know Heother. I guess you could do that, Heother. That'd be a little bit more challenging to write that one out. Okay, good. So that little bit lighter there, but names, and we're going to be using those in the next chapter, so that'll be good. We're going to say my name is so-and-so. Oh, yes, we'll take Heoth off. And notice names can have that the at the front, the ha, but you don't need to say the Heath. It's just how it is. Yeah, you could. The Heath said? Yeah, but you don't need to translate it that way. You can see from that the article is not, of course, used exactly the same in English as in Greek. So here's the paradigm of Amy. Let's go ahead and, this is a very typical verbal paradigm. Paradigms have the first person, second person, third person singular, followed by first, second, third person plural. You need to memorize the forms of Amy. You need to know them not just as well as the back of your hand, better than the back of your hand, because I really don't know the back of my hand very well. So maybe you do. Maybe you stare at it a lot. Like in class, instead of looking at the board, you look at your hand. But you want to learn these forms, okay? Very, very well. So let's go ahead and say the forms of Amy. Amy, A, ST, Esmen, Este, AC. Let's say it again. Amy.
You want to pronounce with the noon at the end?
We will not say the noon for now. We'll say it once without the noon and one with the noon. We'll do it that way, okay? Amy, A, ST, Esmen, Este, AC, and now with the noon. Amy, A, Estin, Esmen, Este, Asin. Good. All right. And please learn those very well. Now, if you wanted to say I am, what would you say? You could just say Amy. Now, if the subject is first person, that's what you would say. Okay? You could also say ego Amy, ego meaning I am, but Amy on its own would be sufficient to say I am. You don't need to say ego explicitly. If you've just seen Amy and there's no ego, you can let go of the ego and it would still be Amy, I am. So, now what if the subject is autos or he? If it's he, then the form of the verb would be st or estin, depending on what we're going to talk about in a second, versus Amy. Okay, so this is the present tense of Amy. Different persons and numbers because the verb agrees with the subject. Verbs are very agreeable. Now let's talk about that noon at the end. St versus estin and ac versus asin. That noon is not technically part of the verb. It's called a new movable because it can move in or out, like cows going over the fence. That would be the movable probably. This is a new movable. That's different. A movable movable new, right here. Okay. If you ever go to the airport in Zurich, and you're going through like going from terminal to one terminal, they have this guy, this waving. It's like on the side, it's like this interactive thing. You see this guy going a Swiss flag, and you hear this. And it goes through, because they're proud of their cows, the Swiss cows, right? So you can go see Zwingli's church building and other influential historical places. Zwingli, of course, had some Anabaptists executed, which was unfortunate. Okay, so those news on the SD and AC are not technically part of the verb, but they're called new movables. And they were devised to help with pronunciation. If you had a verbal form that ended with Yoda, so like SD and AC, Yoda at the end, and the next word begins with a vowel, that would make it hard to say together. So the new was stuck on the end of the verb to make the pronunciation easier. So you have AC and ST normally, but if the next word begins with a vowel, then you have estin and asin. Now, Mounce in the textbook and the critical text say that they started using new in Greek on these forms, the new movables, even when the following word did not begin with a vowel. So Mounce basically just says, just memorize it as estin and asin. But if you compare the TR and the critical text, you'll see something different. You see both forms clearly present in the TR. And so the TR here again has better grammar. And consequently, I would highly recommend that you consider ST and estin as alternative third-person forms. So just, it has the new movable on it. And you'll be encountering both when you read the actual Bible. When you read your text receptus, you'll see ST if the word following doesn't begin with a vowel. If it does begin with a vowel after, you'll have estin. All right? So the actual rule that the new is on there if the following word begins with a vowel is what you'll actually see in your Greek New Testament. But you won't be seeing that in Mounce's workbook, because Mounce, since he's critical text, will just have it estin and asin all the time. All right? So keep that in mind. The new movable actually does move in or out. It's not permanently there. Questions about that? Comments, questions about that? Okay. One other form of eimi to learn at this point, and that is ein. Right there, third singular ein. Ein is the past tense form, past time form of eimi, third person singular. So ein means he was, she was, it was. Why are we learning one form of the past now? Again, it really helps you to have a lot of good sentences, because think about how common to say he was, it was. Was is a very common word. All right? So that's why we have that in there. Oh, and one other thing about eimi. These forms of eimi, notice they have accents, right? Eimi, a, estin, or esti, esmen, esta, ac. Those, sometimes you'll see forms of eimi that don't have an accent on them, and they're not typos. Eimi is a type of word called an enclitic. Can you say enclitic? Enclitic? Okay, good. Enclitic. Enclitic means it's pronounced with the following word. They kind of have a click together. Okay? So, an enclitic word, on page 13 actually, back then, the professor in the margin of BBG tells you what an enclitic is. So page 13 margin, he says, some words appear to have two accents. There are certain words that lose their accent. Get the professor here. Some words appear to have two accents. There are certain words that lose their accent to the following word, proclitic, or the preceding word, enclitic. And you end up with one word not having an accent and another word possibly having two accents. Ace is a proclitic, so we find ace tain oikion. So notice that ace still has a smooth breath mark, but there's no accent on the ace. Ace tain oikion. St or estin is an enclitic, so you find a hu tos estin. So notice here, the estin has no accent on it, but the hu tos has two accents. It has a circumflex over the upsilon, and it has an acute over the omicron. So the estin gave its accent away to the hu tos. So that's what it means, enclitic. It's a word that's enclitic. Again, this does not change the meaning. It's just the pronunciation thing. Doesn't change the meaning, so don't need to be super worried about it. Now, if you go back to this chapter, so 8.12, which is page 59. Okay. He says on here, except for A, the forms of eimi are enclitics, which means they push their accent back on the previous word. They will normally not have an accent of their own. Okay? So that's what they do. So if it's just on its own like this, it has an accent, but when it's in actual sentences, they frequently don't, except for A, with that circumflex. All right. So 8.15, we mentioned predicate nominatives. We had to talk about predicate nominatives because just like to be in English takes a predicate nominative, so does eimi in Greek in all its forms. There are a few other words in Greek that take predicate nominatives as well, but you don't need to worry about those right now. So you're not going to find st or asin followed by a direct object in the accusative. Won't happen. Unless it's your sentence and you're doing it wrong, right? in your workbook you might have it because you wrote it in wrong. But it won't be in an actual Greek, okay? In Greek, eimi is a stative verb. It's drawing that equal sign. So you'll find a predicate nominative after eimi. So that's why we need to talk about it now, because we're learning eimi. Okay, questions about eimi? Okay, translation hints. On haughty and hina clauses and prepositional phrases, you can draw a slash in front of the preposition or the haughty or the hina. Go to the end of the phrase or clause, draw a final slash there. View those prepositional phrases as a unit. By viewing them as a unit, it will help you in translation to break up longer sentences into parts, into something manageable, and this is an important way. So breaking up those, if you have a big sentence, you can break it into parts by taking those prepositional phrases, separating them out. That'll help you in your translation. You also want to consider what a preposition modifies. Usually a preposition modifies a verb. So for example, in 8.16, we have the sentence, halagos erkatai eis kosmon. The word goes into the world. So there, eis is modifying erkatai, goes. So where does the word go? It goes into the world. Sometimes, or into the lake. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. Sometimes you'll see in Greek, including in the workbook, the object of a preposition or prepositional phrase will not have the Greek article. So in Greek, the way a Greek could say into the lake, he could say eis tein thalason, into eis tein the lake thalason. You could say eis tein thalason, but sometimes you'll just see eis thalason, into and lake, with no explicit the. In English, you can't say into lake, okay? Unless lake is the name of a guy and you are body slamming him, then you could go into lake, I guess. But if into the lake would be different, going into the water. So this is one of the unusual circumstances where even if there's no article in Greek, you can add it in your translation. So if you say eis thalason in Greek, you can say into the lake, and that is totally fine, even though there's no explicit the in the Greek text. There's nothing wrong with doing that. In fact, sometimes if you do have an article, if they do say eis tein thalason with that explicit the, it may need to make you take note of that explicitly. There's a reason for that. Okay, summary. Summary of this chapter. We learned about prepositions, words that show the relationship between two other words. They may be spatial, but they may also show other relationships like being temporal or instrumental. They may be followed by objects, and their objects, depending on the preposition, may always be in only one case, or they may be in two cases or three cases. You need to look at the case of the object before you can translate the preposition, and that entire package of preposition plus object and modifiers is a prepositional phrase. Do not use keywords when you translate the object of a preposition. You can let the meaning of the preposition carry through. Prepositions are not inflected, but they can be elided or aspirated. When the preposition ends in a vowel, and the next word begins with a vowel, the last vowel on the preposition can drop out. That's elision. Or it's marked with an elision mark. And when the preposition ends with a vowel, and the following word begins with a vowel and rough breath mark, then you can have aspiration. Don't be surprised if you find the article missing in a Greek prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrases, haughty clauses, hina clauses are all dependent clauses. They won't have the main verb. And we also learned eimi and reviewed issues of person and agreement. You need to learn the forms of eimi, learn them well, very well. Eimi will not be followed by a direct object in the accusative, but by a predicate nominative. Please remember to treat the workbook as a test, learn the chapter, review the lecture notes, memorize the paradigms and vocabulary, then go back and do the chapter and see if you missed things. If you missed things, it's okay. Go back and learn those things again you didn't get the first time. If you do that, it will be very helpful to you. This chart here is helpful for common prepositions. It covers some of them in a useful way, not all of them. Then we have the vocabulary here. Let's say the vocabulary. And I'll say it, then you say it, and that's what we'll do. Okay? Allah, but, yet, or except. Allah, but, yet, except. And the textbook says when the word following the Allah begins with a vowel, the final alpha goes away. So, I guess Allah is in the New Testament. All right. Apa means with a genitive away. or from. Okay. It can be op or off. Okay. So apa plus the genitive away from. Apa plus the genitive away from. Dia plus the genitive through plus the accusative on account of. Dia plus the genitive through plus the accusative on account of. Eimi is I am, exist, live, and present. Eimi, I am, exist, live, and present. Ek, or ex, when the word following is a vowel. Ek plus the genitive from, out of. Ek plus the genitive from, out of. Hemera, hemeras, he, day. Hemera, hemeras, he, day. Ain, he, she, or it was. Ain, he, she, or it was. Thalassa, thalasses, he, sea or lake. Thalassa, thalasses, he, sea or lake. Thanatos, thanatuha, death. Thanatos, thanatuha, death. Hina, in order that. Hina, in order that. Ioannes, Ioannuha, John. Ioannes, Ioannuha, John. Lego, I say or speak. Lego, I say or speak. Meta, plus the genitive with, plus the accusative after. Meta, plus the genitive with, plus the accusative after. Oikia, oikias he, house or home. Oikia, oikias he, house or home. Oikos, oikuha, house or home. Oikos, oikuha, house or home. Synonyms there. Oklos, okluha, crowd or multitude. Oklos, okluha, crowd, multitude. Para, plus the genitive from, plus the dative beside or in the presence of, plus the accusative alongside of. Para, plus the genitive from, plus the dative beside in the presence of, plus the accusative alongside of. Probably 3 flashcards there. Parabole, paraboles he, parable. Parabole, paraboles he, parable. Pros, plus the accusative, to, towards, or with. Pros, plus the accusative, to, towards, with. Hupa, plus the genitive by, plus the accusative under. Hupa, plus the genitive by, plus the accusative under. That's the vocab. Those little notes in blue at the bottom of the page are very useful. I do want to point out on meta, he mentions that meta plus the genitive is usually a person or a personal concept. And you have a different preposition, soon, that's usually used when the object is impersonal. All right? Now, with the verbs just through chapter 8, that means you have actually, if you count up all the instances, you have now learned 51% of the words in the Greek New Testament. It's pretty good. Give yourself a pat on the back if you want. Okay. So 51%, that's pretty amazing. Half the New Testament's words. A lot of them are words like the, okay, but still, that's pretty good. It will take a little longer to get to 75%, but we've got to 50 right now. And then Mounce has this picture. This is the last picture, and I think you may be able to figure out what this is about here. What is this about? What do you think? Mary Poppins. Musikael. Mary Poppines. So we have an exegetical insight here, beginning of chapter 9, talking about adjectives. Adjectives can modify a noun. They can be attributive. They can assert something about a noun. They can be predicate. Or they can stand in the place. I'm just going to get it up here. I'm going to get it on the wall here. So, they can modify a noun, be attributive. They can assert something about a noun, be predicate, or stand in the place of a noun and be substantival. And he says sometimes it's hard to tell what's what. So we have the adjective panerou, evil, in Matthew 6:13. Matthew 6:13. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, the Authorized Version says, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. King James Version says, but deliver us from evil. But he says in Greek, there's an article. Deliver us from to panerou. So that shows, Dr. Dan Wallace says, that's to be taken substantively. Deliver us from the evil one. All right. And he says there's not a little difference here. The Father does not always keep his children out of dangers, disasters, or the ugliness of the world. He does not always deliver us from evil, but he does deliver us from the evil one. And he's not teaching that God will make our life a rose garden, but he'll protect us from the evil one, the devil himself. That's what he says. And he is a very intelligent person. He's wrote a very helpful second-year Greek grammar, Dan Wallace. So this clearly shows that the authorized version is wrong. We should adopt modern versions that do what Dan Wallace says. Right? That's right, right?
Obviously.
Obviously, okay.
New Dan Wallace version.
New Dan Wallace version. NDW. DWV, okay. So what do you think about that? I mean, it says it's apa tu paneru. There's an article. So from evil, or from the evil one. He says that this adjective is a substantival adjective, evil one, not just evil. Do you agree? Now, notice this is not a textual variant. This is a translational one. Oh, and by the way, it's interesting. Wallace says there's a big difference, but there's no doctrinal differences between the versions, right? No, I just want you to think about that. So this is the model prayer too. Should we pray? Did the Lord Jesus tell us to pray for deliverance from evil, which would include Satan? Is Satan evil? Yeah, Satan's evil, right? So if this is evil, that would include the evil one too. But is this evil in a broader sense? Evil including sin? Evil included evil in your heart, which is like not temptation, right? But deliver us from evil. Or is it not temptation, but only the evil one we're supposed to be delivered from? Okay? That's pretty significant.
Why would we pray for a broader sense? It's a joke.
Why? Well, yeah, no, it's significant though. I mean, if this is a model, this is significant.
It's why wouldn't you pray for deliverance from, and from sickness? Sickness comes from sin, so.
Yeah, no, sickness, can come from sin. Not always, certainly, but it definitely can.
Sickness entered into the world because of sin.
It did, sickness, yeah, absolutely. So no, there is definitely theological significance. And here, we can see here on this chart the difference. You can see that the tu paneru is in red there, evil in the authorized version. Notice the New King James Version says deliver us from the evil one. Because the New King James is just updating hard to understand the words of the King James, right? Evil was hard to understand, and so they made it the evil one. It's not a different idea, it's just updating hard words. Right?
By making them
different.
By making more parts.
Yeah. No, obviously, the New King James here is not just helping you understand what the King James means. It's changing the idea. Now, if the King James is wrong, well, then maybe you should do that. But it is doing what the NIV does, the evil one. It's not just, the New King James is not just updating hard to understand words in the King James. All right. So we see that difference there.
The New King James actually conforms to critical text in many places.
Yeah, the New King James conforms to it definitely has a critical text influence on it. It definitely does, which is unfortunate. If I was on a desert island and I could either have a New King James or an NIV, I would have a New King James. But I'm not on a desert island. It's Wisconsin. It's too cold to be a desert island. So I don't have that choice, so I'll keep my authorized version. Now, while it seems like a reasonable argument, just say therefore it has to be this thing. But in the same sermon, we have Christ saying, let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay, for whatsoever is more of these cometh of evil. And there again, it's tu paneru, ek tu paneru estin. So there you have, maybe you could say that should be the evil one too. Okay, maybe. I think evil looks better there too. But what about Matthew 5:39? But I say unto you that you resist not evil. And there again, it's articular. To panero, the evil. So is Christ saying, I'm telling you, don't resist the devil? Okay? That's impossible. So a text without a context is a pretext. We have these other uses in Matthew's record of Christ's sermon itself, where the to panero or tu paneru is clearly meaning evil in that broader sense, not just the evil one. So I'm afraid that Dr. Wallace should have maybe looked at how Christ used the same phrase in the same sermon a little bit better, and then he wouldn't have drawn all these theological conclusions from saying that deliver us from evil is wrong and restricted it to the evil one, which we certainly, it's right to pray for deliverance from the evil one. But restricting it to that, even based on that pre-context in those other texts, and even the contrast with temptation in the verse itself, temptation but evil, fits. And when he says that evil is wrong because God doesn't promise that it'll make our life a bed of roses, well, evil here is obviously talking about sin, right? Deliver us from sin. And believers, God transforms us progressively, delivering us from evil. So this isn't saying that it's evil is not saying, you will be delivered. Life will be the bed of roses, okay? So evil is better translation than the evil one. Unfortunately, the NKJV follows the NIV in changing it. And Dr. Wallace is wrong here. And I think that's worth pointing out. You know what? You're right. A bed of roses would be, at least if they're still on the thorns, a bed of roses would be painful. That's a good point. So maybe life can be a bed of roses. The thorns are still on them, right? So do not resist the evil one is obviously not Matthew 5:39. We can learn from this we need to be careful about people who criticize the authorized version based on what they claim is evidence from the Greek. Sometimes, very, very frequently, in fact, the evidence is no evidence at all. Okay, like in this example here. Now, by the way, note I didn't just say, the Greek says the evil one, but just forget what the Greek says, just go with the English. I didn't say that because that would be wrong. That would be an unbiblical way to view things. But we did see here that there's very good reasons based in the Greek to receive what the authorized version says. It's accurately translated there. Oh, and by the way, just point out, as well as worth pointing out, notice that in the NIV it leaves out, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever, amen. It just says deliver us from the evil one, and that's it. Because in the critical text it leaves out the doxology at the end, which is very unfortunate. Can you see that footnote on that? It says, some late manuscripts say, for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever, amen. What do you think some is?
5,700 different manuscripts that make up.
5,700? Okay, yeah. 57, yeah. The sum here is 97.6%, while the critical text has 1.1 manuscript support, including Aleph, B, and D. So, do you think this footnote, if a common person has a footnote, he's reading NIV, and his footnote says some late manuscripts say that, do you think he would understand that some means 97.6% and that the critical text readings fall by 1.1%? Or do you think he thinks some is, 10%, 5%? This footnote is not helping you understand what's going on. It's technically true. Some could be, if you had 10,000 people, some could be 2 and some could be 99,9999. Those are both some. But this is not really helping the reader understand what's going on. Dean Burgon points out that Paul quotes the doxology in 2 Timothy 4:18, so that would kind of show that Christ would have said it. And it's also found in all copies of the Peshitta, some copies of the Latin, as well as the Syriac, Sahidic, Gothic, Ethiopic, Armenian, Georgian, Slavonic, Harklean, Palestinian, Arabic, and Persian versions. It's referenced in the Didache, the Apostolic Constitutions, Ambrose, and other patristics. Chrysostom quotes them and comments on them without suspicion. And they're not just in the overwhelming majority of commentaries, of copies, but also in early ones like Phi and Sigma from the 5th, 6th centuries. He actually said in his book, The Causes of Corruption of the Holy Gospels, but how will men pretend to explain an interpolation universal as the present, which may be traced as far back as the 2nd century, which has established itself without appreciable variety of reading in all the manuscripts, which has therefore found its way from the earliest time into every part of Christendom, is met with in all the lectionaries and in all the Greek liturgies, and has so effectively won the Church's confidence that to this hour it forms part of the public and private devotions of the faithful all over the world. So, it's not just the late reading, and also it's very strongly supported by the manuscript evidence. These notes in modern versions can be very confusing, unfortunately, and we do, and that's certainly also very doctrinally significant. I mean, does the model prayer end with the evil one? Or does it end with praising God? It's a good question. So I just want to point that out. I think you should be aware of that. Okay, 3 types of adjectives: attributive, substantive, and predicate. The attributive adjective, by far the most common use of the adjective in both English and Greek. When an attributive adjective, what it does is it gives an attribute of the head noun. The head noun is the noun or pronoun that the adjective is modifying. So the attributive adjective gives an attribute or quality, tells you something about the noun. So he studied ancient Hebrew. Here the word ancient is a quality of Hebrew, telling you something about it. We're not talking about modern Hebrew. We're not talking about Ebonics Hebrew. We're talking about ancient Hebrew. I don't know, they might have Ebonics Hebrew. Yo, shalom. Okay, but we're talking about ancient Hebrew. All right. This is the most common use of adjectives in Greek and English. Then you can have substantival use of the adjective. This is where an adjective is functioning as a noun. In the phrase the good, the bad, and the ugly, those words are all adjectives, but they're functioning as nouns. They're functioning as substantives. They're substantival adjectives. In the phrase out with the old, in with the new, old is an adjective, new is an adjective, but they're functioning as if they were nouns. So adjectives can be attributive and they can be substantive. They can also be predicate. These adjectives, some prefer to talk about these as adjectives in the predicate position versus the predicate adjective, but the textbook just calls it a third type of adjective, so that's fine. In Wallace and his Greek grammar Beyond the Basics would call these predicate adjectives, and that's certainly what they are, but you don't need to worry about the terminology too much here. So predicate, what is the predicate in a sentence? The verb and the predicate part of the sentence is the verb and what follows. Subject part is the subject and its modifiers. Predicate part is the verb and everything that goes with it. So predicate adjective has to follow the verb. But to be a predicate adjective, the verb has to be to be. When an adjective follows the verb to be, then it's a predicate adjective. And in Greek, the verb is doesn't have to be specifically expressed in order to have a predicate adjective. It could be one of the italicized words in the King James. So in the sentence, she is young, she is the subject, is the stative verb, and young is the predicate adjective. That would be the word in the predicate position, following the verb is. And sometimes in Greek, you just have she and young without an expressed is, and that would still be a predicate adjective, right? Are you surprised that the model sentence wasn't she is old? That's just, you're not supposed to talk about that, right? So, that's enough English grammar for now. Greek adjectives function a lot like their English counterparts. An adjective is a word that modifies a noun, pronoun, or other adjective. So the smart student, smart is an adjective. The righteous servant, righteous is an adjective. The dark brown horse, dark is modifying brown, and brown is modifying horse. So an adjective is a word modifying a noun, pronoun, or other adjective. I needed to mention that. Okay. So now we're on to 9.6 and 9.7. We have agathos here. 3 columns, a masculine column, a feminine column, and a neuter column. Just like the article, adjectives can function in all 3 genders. Can nouns be in all 3 genders?
Yes.
So, pneuma. Can pneuma sometimes be neuter and sometimes be masculine and sometimes be feminine? Spirit. No. It's always neuter. How about Jesus? That's a noun. Is Jesus sometimes masculine, sometimes feminine, sometimes neuter? No. Nouns stick to one gender. Okay. No transgender nouns. They stick to one. Okay. Just one gender for nouns. Whatever they are, they are. That's why, remember, like you have, if you look like at the vocabulary for this chapter, You have commandment, entele, enteleis he. Since it has that he there, entele is a feminine noun, so it's always feminine. Commandment is always feminine, and that's just how it is. Doulos, slave or servant. Doulos, douluha, always masculine, has the ha. So adjectives can be all three genders. Nouns stick to one gender. Just like the article can be all three genders, so can adjectives. Now, when you memorize adjectives here, it's better probably to read it across the chart. So here we have the nominative singular forms are agathos, agathe, agathon. Then the genitive forms are agathu, agathes, agathu. Dative forms, singular here, agatho, agathe, agatho. Accusative forms, agathon, agathane, agathon. Right? Then the plurals, going across nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. So the nominatives, agathoi, agathai, agatha. Genitives, agathon, agathon, agathon. Datives, agathois, agathais, agathois. Accusatives, agathus, agathos, agatha. So, agathos, nominative singular, how would you translate that on its own? If you just had agathos, it's part of a sentence somewhere, what would it be on its own? Good, just good. Agathu, genitive singular, what would that be? Of good. Good. You get. Agatho, what would that be on its own? Just somewhere. Too good, probably, or for good. Too good. Agathon. Good, but it's the object of something. Agathoi. Yeah, good, but it's plural somehow. Maybe if it was substantival, maybe it's good ones, good men. Agathon, plural, what would that be? Of good, or it's plural somehow. Yeah. Agathois would be two good ones, or good plural somehow, and agathus is that accusative plural. Good. All right. And notice it says at the top 2-1-2. That means this agathos is a 2-1-2 adjective. There are three different forms for the three genders. The masculine follows the second declension, the feminine follows the first declension, and the neuter follows the second declension. And we'll see the significance of that in just a second. Let's go ahead and say all these forms together across, going left to right. Agathos, agathe, agathon, agathu, agathes, agathu, agatho, agathe, agatho, agathon, agathane, agathon, agathoi, agathai, agatha, agathon, 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 agathois, agathais, agathois, agathus, agathos, agatha. You go. Before we do any more about that, look at the professor on page 65, 66 here. So, if you have a name, you want to say my name is Anima moi Thomas Estin. Anima is name, moi is to me. Estin is he is, but it can also be it is, because it's just third singular. So the name is, my name is so-and-so. So Anima moi Thomas Estin. And we can all kind of say our names. You want to say your name? What's your name?
Anima moi estin hia esti.
Anima moi heath estin. Esti. Oh, no, it would be esti, yeah. Because of the end of the sentence. Anima moi heath esti. That's a good point. He has it estin because he's having you put the new on everything. There's nothing following that estin. So you actually don't have the movable new. So it would be anima moi Thomas esti. So you get anima moi heath esti. Okay, what would you say?
Anima moi timotheos esti.
Anima moi timotheos esti. You get, yeah, you get. All right, that's kind of fun. And then there's another professor on page 66. Well, it's the same professor. He's just saying something else. So then how do you say, what is your name? Tis soy anima estin. Ti, what? Can be y sometimes. Soy isn't moi. Soy is to thee, not to me. Anima is name. Esti is you know. The punctuation, notice it has that, what is this at the end here? The semicolon thing?
Question mark.
Question mark. So, what to thee name is? What is thy name? Okay. So, tisoi anima estin. Oh, anima etimas estin. Tisoi anima estin. Anima moi heath esti. Ah, you good. You good. Do you want to ask him? You can ask him too. No, you go. Good. See, this is useful stuff. If you ever find a really, really old person that just grew up speaking Koine Greek, you would know what to say.
How old is really old?
Like Methuselah. Like if Methuselah lived in the 1st century and he was still alive now, you could ask him his name. Oh no, you're right, Methuselah, no. I think Methuselah would be dead too. Yeah, this is really bad. So probably not too many people will, but you never know. You never know. All right, so that's how you would say that, or more likely, you can just say that to fellow Greek students. And we can also say hello, Kyra, anamoi mu esti, to some others, like you could say. So if you want to Greek, so you can say Kyra, anamoi thomas esti, tisoi anima esti. Okay. Do you want to ask me what mine is? Tisoi anima esti. What to thee is your name? Tisoi anima esti. Yeah. All right. You can work on that. It's good. Kyra. So good stuff. So he has that fun thing how to say your name in there. So now let's go back to 3 functions of adjectives. And they're similar to how English adjectives function, so that's nice. So you have attributive adjectives. Most adjectives, remember, are attributive. They're describing, limiting, or clarifying something about the head noun. And when they're attributive, they agree, well, what determines the case, number, and gender of an attributive adjective? The noun. Just like the article. What determines the case, number, and gender of an article when it modifies a noun? The noun does. The noun will tell you whether the article should be a ta, or a hey, or a ton, or whatever. Whatever, if the noun is a masculine, singular, accusative, then the article will be masculine, singular, accusative. If the noun is genitive, plural, feminine, the article will be genitive, plural, feminine. Same thing with an attributive adjective. The attributive if the noun is accusative, plural, masculine, the adjective will be accusative, plural, masculine. So just like the article, the attributive adjective will agree with the noun in case, number, and gender. That's with the C, N, and G. Do you have that up there? Yeah. Attributive adjective agrees in case, number, and gender, like the article. Right? So if you saw ha agathos logos, both the ha, the, and the agathos, good, modify the nominative singular masculine noun logos. So the article and adjective would also be nominative singular masculine. It would be ha agathos logos, not ton agathos logos or ton agathon logos. It would be ha agathos logos. So for attributive adjectives, pretty straightforward. That also helps you with your exegesis and translation. If you see an adjective and you think it goes with a noun, then the gender, number, and case have to agree. If you think this adjective goes with this noun, but the adjective is feminine, accusative, plural, and the noun is masculine, singular, nominative, it's not modifying. It's not an attributive adjective. They have to agree, case, number, gender. Then you can also have substantival adjectives. So they can function as if they were nouns. Now, what would determine the case of an adjective functioning as a noun? Attributive adjective, the case, number, gender is determined by the noun. If it's substantival, it's not modifying a noun. It's acting as if it were a noun. What would determine the case, number, and gender then? The ending? Well, yeah, no, the ending certainly will. Yes, absolutely. It's always the ending. In all of this, it's always the ending. But let's say you were translating, or you were trying to think in a sentence in Greek, or you're trying to write a sentence in Greek, and you wanted to have the word good as a subject of a sentence. What case would you put that adjective in? That substantival adjective.
Subject would be
Nominative, good. What if you had a sentence and you wanted the adjective to be the direct object? What case would it be in? Accusative, yeah. So in a substantival, for a substantival adjective, the case is determined by the function in the sentence. Whatever it's doing in the sentence. If it's functioning as a subject, nominative. If it's functioning as an indirect object, dative. What about the gender and number? The gender and number will be determined by what the adjective, what kind of noun the adjective is standing in for here. So if you have agathos and it's for a single lady, then agathos would be feminine singular. It'd be he agathe, the good woman, he agathe. If good were standing for a single man and is a subject of a sentence, it'd be ha agathos, the good man. So the gender number determined by what is being represented by this substantival adjective. If it was good, some neuter word, good wind, you were happy the wind came, then good would be neuter, the neuter form. So adjective is functioning substantively, case is determined by the function in the sentence, gender number by what it's referring to. When you have substantival adjectives, you may need to add words in. If you see he agathe on its own as a substantival adjective, you probably would not just translate it as the good, but more likely translate it as the good woman or the good whatever the feminine thing was in context. You might put the word woman in brackets or italics or whatever to represent that there's not an explicit word in there, but you probably would add that word woman in. Okay, so attributive and substantival adjectives. Predicate adjectives. This is where you have an eimi, sometimes specifically stated, sometimes not. You see an adjective, you know it's predicate for some reasons we're going to talk about a little bit later, but you don't see an eimi. Maybe then you would supply an italicized to be. So if you saw ha anthropos agathos, the man good, and you knew that agathos was predicate, you would translate ha anthropos agathos as the man is good. And you would probably italicize the is or put it in brackets. So the man is good, ha agathos, ha anthropos agathos. So you have attributive, substantival, and predicate functions. Comments, questions about those functions? Okay. Halftime review. An attributive adjective, page 67, gives an attribute to a noun, and that is called the head noun. Head noun is what the attributive adjective is modifying. Attributive adjective agrees with its head noun in case, number, and gender. Substantival adjective functions as a noun. Case is determined by the function, number, and gender, what it stands for. Substantival adjectives tend to follow natural gender versus grammatical gender. Predicate adjective asserts something about the subject, uses the verb to be. The lexical form, the form in BDAG, if you look it up, of any word that occurs in more than one gender is the nominative singular masculine. So if you want to look up the word good, you'd look under agathos. You wouldn't look under agathe, you'd look under agathos. So the lexical form of of a word that has more than one gender is the nominative singular masculine. Patriarchy, right? By the way, was Israel patriarchal? Was that bad? No? If you say that, though, you're a very evil person, aren't you? Kaka, yeah. That's right. So, yeah. Yeah, you're very bad if you say that patriarchy is actually a biblical thing. Something that God set up. Obviously, women were equal. They weren't like, inferior beings, but patriarchy, male leadership is the biblical pattern. Yeah, no, Isaiah said, it was a judgment. When the women and children were in charge, that was bad. It was a judgment. Yeah. It's bad for women in the military, too. Like, when God made their army as if they were women, and they ran away, that was bad. So, they certainly didn't let women in who thought they were men, or the other way around, and they had a pretty strong penalty for that. So, patriarchy. Friendly fire. Friendly fire. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so 9.11. Let me give you a term here. So recognizing, how do you know if an adjective is functioning attributively, substantively, or predicate? In a predicate way. The key here is the article. So remember, the article is your friend. The article will help you make the right decisions about whether it's attributive or predicate or what it's doing here. Now, we have a number of guidelines, which I'm going to give you in a second. But the guidelines are guidelines. They're not infallible rules. There are some exceptions. But the guidelines are generally valid. They are guidelines that are helpful. Now, before we give you the guidelines, we need to define the words articular and an arthrous. What do you think articular means? What do you think is present? The Greek article is present if it's articular. It's not about tickling people. Okay, articular. Anarthrous. What do you think that means? No article. Anarthrous. Okay. Not that King Arthur isn't here. It's that it doesn't have the article. Okay, I have a chart here. Anna. The King Arthur is going to come back in. So this chart, I would recommend that you memorize this chart. You have the attributive and predicate positions. This specific chart is not in Mounce, but it's actually in Wallace's Greek Grammar Beyond the Basics on page 309. But I think it's a good chart, so I put it in. Gives you the third attributive position. You don't need to worry about too much at this point. It's actually like on a test that might be more an extra credit type one, but we're worrying about the first and second. But since they're all there, we're going to put it on there. So you have an adjective, and you have a noun, and you have an article. What order they're in actually here? Here word order does make a difference in Greek. Okay, so this will tell you certain things. Saying the article is present doesn't mean that it's right in front of a particular word here. It just means that it's in the sentence somewhere. So these are articular adjectives because in this construction there's an article somewhere. So if you saw ha agathos anthropos, the article right in front of the agathos is telling you that this is an attributive position, and it's modifying anthropos. So the first attributive position is ha agathos anthropos. That means the good man. The second attributive position, so the first attributive position is article, adjective, noun. There you have an attributive adjective, the good man, ha agathos anthropos. Or you can learn it as article, modifier, noun for reasons we'll learn a bit later, because other things can modify nouns. So first attributive, article, modifier, noun, ha agathos anthropos. There's a second attributive position here. That is ha anthropos, ha agathos, the man, the good. But the man, the good, really is just the good man. The second article there, ha anthropos, ha agathos, is basically just telling you this is attributive position. So you translate ha anthropos, ha agathos, just the same as you translate ha agathos anthropos. They both mean the good man. There are a few nuances to the meaning a little bit, but you don't need to worry about those at this point. They both get translated the same. There might be like a slightly different emphasis with the one versus the other. And then the third attributive is anthropos ha agathos, which also means the good man. Less common though. The point here is if you see the article right in front of the adjective, these guidelines tell you have an attributive adjective. If you have an articular attributive adjective, the adjective will always have the article immediately in front of it. Look at those two predicate positions, agathos ha anthropos, ha anthropos agathos. In either the first or second predicate position is the ha right in front of the adjective agathos. In those two predicate positions, is the article ha right in front of the adjective agathos? No. So attributive adjectives, when you have this, the article, now in those attributive adjectives, is there always an article right in front of the agathos? Yes, in attributives. Now, the second attributive, there's two articles. Okay. Third attributive has the noun without an article. Second attributive, the noun has the article. But the difference is the adjective always has the article right in front of it. Whatever else is going on, you know it's attributive if it has the article right in front of it. If it doesn't have the article right in front of it, it's predicate. Okay, that's the useful rule for you here. Article immediately in front of the adjective. So, those are attributive and predicate adjectives. Now, let's say there was another scenario here. Let's say you saw ha agathos, and you're trying to find a noun that this agathos is modifying, but you don't find one. It just is the good, and there's no noun anywhere. That means it's probably substantival. So this ha agathos that just has nothing after it could just be the good man. And that's why there isn't an adjective anywhere. So attributive adjectives, you have these different options. First attributive, second attributive, third attributive. You have substantival adjectives. And then you have predicate adjectives. Predicate adjectives. So here you find an article with a noun. And then the adjective is anarthrous, which means it is... Anarthrous means? Non-articular, no article. So you have ha anthropos agathos. If you have ha anthropos agathos, that is actually second attributive. Ha anthropos agathos, that probably means the man is good. So there agathos is a predicate adjective. It's in the predicate position. There's an implied verb to be. The subject is anthropos, the man, ha anthropos, implied to be agathos, good. The man is good. Same thing with the first predicate, agathos ha anthropos. Good is the man, except it's actually anthropos is the subject, so that is the man is good as well. The word order looks like good is the man, but the articular noun is the subject, so it's the man is good, not good is the man. So you can think about that. We don't, in English, maybe have something exactly like this, so maybe it's a little bit new to you, but it'll be all right. It'll be fine. You can do it. Now, we also have 9.13. He talks about scenarios here where there's no article. So you just have anthropos agathos, and there's no articles on anything. There, it could be either attributive or predicate. If the context would show that anthropos agathos is agathos modifying anthropos, then anthropos agathos would be a good man. So anthropos agathos, a good man. Now, you wouldn't really want to say the good man, supply the article, because there's no article in the Greek. So try to avoid that. It would be a good man, not the good man. Unless there's something really good contextually to do it differently. Or agathos anthropos, or excuse me, anthropos agathos. If you have anthropos agathos and the context would show that the agathos is predicate, then you would translate it as a man is good. If you look at this chart here, look at the first attributive and first predicate positions. First attributive is ha agathos anthropos. First predicate is agathos ha anthropos. Actually, you know what? I'll just illustrate with a second. So, ha anthropos ha agathos is the good man. Second attributive. Ha anthropos agathos is second predicate. Now, in your mind, imagine that the articles weren't there. If you just drop the articles on this and on this, what would be left? Would it be different? It would both be anthropos, agathos. Okay? So there, if you just had anthropos, agathos, and no articles, then the context would have to show you whether it is a good man or a man is good. All right. So if you have an articular use, the article is there. We can have articular, attributive, substantival, and predicate adjectives. And you have these anarthrous uses where there's no article. Questions about that? Maybe a little bit to process, but I think you can get it. Especially as you start seeing it over and over again, you start to get it. Okay, let's talk about odds and ends. A few odds and ends. 9.14. We're covering these odds and ends now because they're going to come up in the workbook and they fit the content of the chapter. So you will occasionally come across a construction where an article is followed by a prepositional phrase. So what is that article doing? You typically here have article, noun, article, modifier. Like here, tous paidos, article, noun, tous, article, and Bethlehem, in Bethlehem. Now here, though, the modifier is not an adjective, but it's a prepositional phrase. This is actually, it's like a second attributive position here, tous paidos, tous, and Bethlehem. Now here, the article in front of the prepositional phrase is telling you the prepositional phrase is modifying the preceding head noun. So this is the children, the and Bethlehem ones, which would just be the children who are in Bethlehem. That's the example that the textbook gives on 9.14 from Matthew 2:16. The second tous, in tous paidos, tous in Bethlehem, tells you that the following prepositional phrase in Bethlehem modifies paidos. It's basically just like this second attributive position adjective, except instead of a noun, you have a prepositional phrase. So, all right. And then the other thing you get sometimes is you get an article followed by a prepositional phrase. You can have that as well, article and then a prepositional phrase, if the prepositional phrase is functioning substantively. So the example in the textbook in 9.14 is Elalesin ton logon tu kuriou pasin tois ente oikia. So there that is they spoke Elalesin, the word ton logon, tu kuriou of the Lord, pasin to all, it's dative, so to all, pas is all, to all, tois, the, in the house. So they spoke the word of the Lord to all the in the house ones. Or in better English, they spoke the word of the Lord to all who are in the house. If these uses of the article or the modifier sounds odd, as you read more and more Greek, it'll become common. You'll get used to it. Just like when Greek children spoke this way, they knew what they were talking about when they spoke to each other and thought this way and wrote this way. So that's the first odd and end. Article in front of a prepositional phrase can be doing these two things. The children, the on Bethlehem ones, they spoke the word to all the in the house ones. Questions about that? Okay.
Could you translate it as all those in the house?
You could translate it as all who are in the house. That would be fine. That's pretty common for translation, all who are in the house. You can't, just because of the different syntax, here you can't really translate it word for word. I mean, you could say to all the in the house ones, but it's kind of bumpy. So all who are in the house is fine. Okay, good question. That's the first odd and end. Article in front of a prepositional phrase. Second odd and end are two adjectives. Agathos, remember we said it was a 2-1-2 adjective. 2-1-2 adjective meant there were 3 different forms for the masculine, the feminine, and the neuter. 2-1-2. Okay? Masculine is second declension, feminine first declension, neuter second declension. There's another type of adjective, like ionion. This is called a 2-2 adjective. This means the first form is second declension, and that first form is used for both the masculine and feminine, while the second form is neuter, as used for neuter words. So in 2-2 adjectives, the adjective does not distinguish between the masculine and feminine forms. So 2-1-2 adjective, you have a different feminine form. 2-2 adjectives, the feminine is just like the masculine. Instead of 2-1-2, that one kind of goes away, just 2-2. Feminine follows the masculine. So that's the second odd and end. 9.16, third odd and end. Neuter plural subjects. The basic rule is that if one has a neuter plural subject, the verb can, not must be, the verb can be singular. So the basic rule is that if one has a neuter plural subject, the verb can be singular. The rule doesn't state that the verb must be singular, only that it can be. What's going on here is that when the author uses a singular verb, he's thinking of the neuter plural subject as a single entity. It's like in English if one saw a flock of geese and wanted to emphasize that it was a single flock, not that there were 27 geese in the flock. You could, if you were saying it in Greek and the words were neuter, use a singular verb with the neuter plural subject. So you could use is. There is a flock of geese instead of there are 27 geese. So if this was neuter plural and then in Greek with the grammatical gender, not like men and women, they're talking about grammatical gender here. But if grammatical gender, neuter plural subject, they can be singular when it's emphasizing it as a single entity instead of each individual one in there. So the neuter plural subject thing here can take place with words we don't think of as neuter, but are grammatically neuter. So for example, 1 John 4:1, here the slide says, test the spirits, see if they are from God, but the Greek has the singular estin. Let's actually take a look at that in the actual Greek New Testament here. So 1 John 4:1. All right. Make it nice and big. So, beloved agapetoi, me panti pneumati pistuita, do not believe not. So, do not every spirit believe in every spirit, but dokamadzite, try ta pneumata, the spirits, e ektu theou estin, if they are from God, because many false prophets are gone out in the world. So here we have the verb estin, which you can see at the bottom of the screen there. It's a third person singular. Estin is, but ta pneumata, pneuma is neuter, is plural here, neuter plural accusative. And so even though we have a plural, ta pneumata, we have the singular estin. So this is an example here. And so the Apostle John, under inspiration here, wanted to emphasize the unity of the spirits, the Antichrist false prophets and demons leading the false teachers here to spread their false teaching. So he used the singular verb instead of the plural one. So we can't say in English, try the spirits whether they is of God. So we have to say, try the spirits whether they are of God. But there's an emphasis upon the unity here. And of course, sometimes you have in charismatic movement, these exorcism ministries and so on, they say that you're supposed to talk to the demons and ask them if they think Jesus came in the flesh and all this stuff. But trying the spirits here is talking about evaluating the doctrine of the false teachers, the human false teachers who are being led by these evil spirits. It's not talking about speaking to evil spirits. You don't see anywhere actually in the New Testament where the apostles got in a conversation with an evil spirit. The only thing anywhere close to that is where the Lord Jesus spoke to the guy that had the legion of demons in him, and there the point wasn't to have a conversation with the demons. The point was to prove the greatness of his power because he cast out a whole legion of demons. So don't talk to demons. It's not very smart. But here, these human false teachers being led by the false teachers there's a unity there. So ta pneumata plural with estin singular. So what we can see then from this is that neuter plural subjects can be singular. When the subject is thought of as unit, they don't have to be, but they can. So that's the end of our adjectives. So that's really good. So 9.17, when you divide a sentence into parts, keep the adjective or modifier with the noun it's modifying, the head noun. All right. So there's the example in the book, ha agathos anthropos graphe ta biblion. So the good man, ha agathos anthropos, think of that adjective agathos with the noun anthropos, keep them together. So keep the adjective or modifier with the noun it's modifying. All right, that's 9.17. Okay, summary. What have we learned in this chapter? Well, we learned that adjectives are words that modify nouns or pronouns, or can modify other adjectives as well. We saw that when an adjective is articular, and there is a word for it to modify, then it's functioning as an attributive adjective. In the case of an attributive adjective, case, number, and gender are determined by the noun it modifies. We also saw that if we have an articular adjective but no noun to modify, that then the adjective is functioning substantively. It is a substantival adjective. Case is determined by function of the sentence, while gender and number are determined by what the adjective is referring to. If we have an articular noun and an anarthrous adjective, an adjective without an article, then we probably have a predicate adjective, in which case the form of the verb to be will need to be supplied. If there's no article anywhere, then we let context be our guide in this anarthrous construction. Try not to use the in your translation, and allow the context to tell you if the adjective is attributive or predicate. We also saw that one can have an article with a prepositional phrase construction. That prepositional phrase can either be modifying a noun or functioning as a substantive. We saw that adjectives have to agree with nouns that they modify in case, number, and gender. For some adjectives, this fact means the adjective will have three different forms, like with the 2-1-2 adjective agathos, agathe, agathon. However, other adjectives are two adjectives, like ionios, on, where the same Greek form is used for both the masculine and feminine, while a distinct form is used for the neuter. And finally, we saw that a singular verb can be used with a neuter plural subject. So, are you in the fog? Are you? Not too bad? Okay. We've been covering more and more things here, and the more we learn, the more we have to retain. It's like the old little line where the guy said, the more you study, the more you know. The more you know, the more you forget. The more you forget, the less you know, so why study? Well, we're not going with that philosophy today there, and there's problems with that logic there. But if you're looking at this chapter and you're saying, I can't do this, then think back to the previous chapters. Are prepositions making a little sense? How the case of the object will vary depending on what preposition it is. If that's a little foggy, how are you doing with datives and genitives? If you go back to chapters 6 and 7, they should be a piece of cake at this point. Chapter 8 maybe is somewhat foggy, and then chapter 9 is foggier still, but that's okay. If you just keep moving, the fog will move with you. If, however, you say, I can't remember what a case is, what's what's the dative again? Then you're in trouble. So then you need to get back on board. Talk to me. We got to set something up. We got to get you back on track here. Talk with friends in the class. Get tutoring help. Get back up to speed. You got to go back, get some help. So if the fog is moving with you, that's okay. All right. This chapter's foggy. Last one's foggy. If 5 chapters back is foggy, nah, that's a problem. All right. So this is just the nature of the fog. So chapters 6 and 7 are still in the fog, then that's too much fog. If chapter 8 is foggy, okay, it just takes time for things to sink in. All right. So it's all right. If you have some fog here, you don't need to worry about it. It's not too bad. Any questions, comments? Okay. Okay, vocabulary. So we're going to pronounce each word in Greek and then say it in English. So agathos, agathe, agathon, good, useful. Agathos, agathe, agathon, good, useful. Agapetos, agapete, agapeton, beloved. Agapetos, agapete, agapeton, beloved. Ionios, ionion, eternal. Ionios, ionion, eternal. Allelone, one another. Allelone, one another. Oh, by the way, as you're looking at these, the roots are, in the textbook, they have that little asterisk in front of, like on agathos. Agathos, agathon says good, useful, and then it says 102, that's the number of times it's used. And there's a little asterisk, and it says agatha, that's the root, okay? So that asterisk with a word, that's what that is, okay? So you can see that in the book, just to mention that. And then also we can see here that all alone never occurs in the nominative or singular, so its lexical form is genitive plural. And all alone is a tricky word because it doesn't mean you're by yourself, but it means one another. So that is tricky. All right, all alone. So apokrythe, he, she, or it answered. Apokrythe, he, she, or it answered. Now this takes its direct object from the dative, and so you don't use the keyword with its direct object. So apokrythe auto is he answered him, not he answered to him. All right? So just point that out. Doulos, douluha, slave, servant. Doulos, douluha, slave, servant. By the way, what percentage of believers in the New Testament are Christ's slaves or servants? 100%? Yeah. So if when you're saved you become Christ's slave, then he'd be Lord, right? So when you get saved, then he's going to be Lord because you're his slave? Yeah. You can't be Jesus' slave and not have him as your Lord. So that, when you tells you something about receiving the gospel, the anti-lordship view is not very tenable for many, many reasons, this being one of them. And being a slave of Jesus, slave is not a very positive thing today. It wasn't that positive. It wasn't very positive then either to be somebody's slave. But you're either going to be Jesus' slave or the devil's slave, and it's much better to be Jesus' slave. He's a very, very good, kind, loving master. And of course, it's not the only metaphor used. We're also called, his brethren and different things as well. But we are called his slaves or servants. So, worth pointing out. Eon, if or when. Eon, if, when. So this introduces a dependent clause. Eon is the words a and on shoved together. That's called crosses when you push two words together. When eon appears after relative pronoun, hos, which you haven't learned yet, it has the effect of appending ever to the end of the pronoun, just like on. So hos, eon means whoever, right? Emos, eme, amon, my, mine. Emos, eme, amon, my, mine. And so this means my, whatever case it's in. And if it's used as substantive, it means mine. Entele, entelese, commandment. entele, entelese, commandment. Kathos, as, even as. Kathos, as, even as. Kakos, kake, kakon, bad or evil. Kakos, kake, kakon, bad, evil. Mu or emu, my. Mu or emu, my. So this is genitive singular of ego, and unlike emos, mu only means my when it's in the genitive case. Can be used with an epsilon accent too. This is discussed more in chapter 11, so we'll leave it at that for now. Just, it's my, okay? Nekros, nekra, nekron, as an adjective dead, as a noun dead body or corpse. Nekros, nekra, nekron, adjective dead, noun dead body, corpse. Pistos, piste, piston, faithful, believing. Pistos, piste, piston, faithful, believing. Paneros, panera, paneron, evil, bad. Paneros, panera, paneron, evil, bad. Protos, prote, proton, first, earlier. Protos, prote, proton, first, earlier. Of course, he mentions at the footnote there a prototype, first of its kind, model or pattern, right? Tritos, trite, triton, third. Tritos, trite, triton, third. Okay, so that's our vocabulary. Now, he also gives you a few previous words here. These are words that you already know that can occur in more than one gender. So basically here you're just learning their neuter and their feminine neuter forms. So alas, ale, Allah, other, another. This is a type of adjective. Full paradigm is on page 349. And you can take a look there. Other or another. We have autos, aute, auta, he, she, it, they, eschatos, aeon, last, and hutos, haute, tuta, this or these. And hutos, haute, tuta is explained more fully in chapter 13, so we're going to learn this for now. And the stem has significant changes. Check page 349 if you want more information now, and wait until chapter 13, and you'll learn more, Lord willing. So, and also on alos, ale, alo, you can see page 349, the paradigm of hutos for that. Okay, we've got some advanced information here in 9.18. So genitive or accusative. If the next to the last letter in the stem of an adjective is a rho or a vowel, the feminine stem ends in alpha, so nekra. And the ending os can indicate either the genitive singular or the accusative plural. Okay? So here we have the paradigm up there. If the next to the last letter is any other letter other than a rho or a vowel, like an agathe, feminine stem ends in eta, and the ending os can only be accusative plural. So he has the question there, can nekros be genitive singular? Oh, and so what do you think? Think so? Sure. Yes, it can. Because the second to last letter in the stem is rho, so it can. Yeah. So if the next to last letter of the stem is any other letter other than a rho or a vowel, then os can only be accusative plural, but because it is rho, it could be genitive singular as well. So, all right, so that's a little bit of advanced information. And then third attributive position in 9.19 here. There is a third attributive position, anthropos agathos. Rare when the modifier is an adjective, but more common when the modifier is a phrase. So we had that chart here. So third attributive position, that anthropos agathos. So when that modifier is a phrase, more common than just an adjective. Now, I would suggest learning that as well. Just learn this chart, and then you'll get them all. There's more information about this in second year Greek basics of Greek Grammar Beyond the Basics. So just throw that in there. All right. And then we have some exegesis here on the Greek article. So how the Greek article is used is quite complex. You can see it translated a number of different ways. Ha can function as the article can be just the definite article, the disciples of John Fast. It can be a grammatical marker showing that a word modifies the previous word. With the angels, the holy, metatone, angelon, tone, hagion. So there it's identifying the adjectival position. So you can do that. It can be used when English does not have one, like with names. And hapagrathes de ha Jesus, apen prosaton, but Jesus answering, it's not the Jesus, but there's the article. Okay. Ha can be with the article can be with a participle or an adjective to make it into a noun, make it substantival. And there it's like a relative clause. He lege to anthropo to tain xeron kera ekonte. He says to the one who has the withered hand. So he says lege to anthropo. He says to the man, the withered hand having is what it is. He says to the man, the withered hand having one, basically, which would be he says to the man who has the withered hand. So it can be that. He says to the man, the withered hand having one. Other times Greek doesn't use the article and English would. In the beginning was the word NRK ein ha logos. There's no article with arche beginning, but it is translated properly as in the beginning, and we'll leave it at that for now. We'll learn more second year Greek about that. Ha can function as a personal or possessive pronoun. Hoi de epon pros auton, and they said to him. It can, husbands love your wives. Hoi andros agapata tas gunaikos, the wives. Husband love the wives, meaning your wives. Homoioi esin paidiois tois en agara kathe menois. They are like children, the sitting in the marketplace ones, children who sit in the marketplace. When ha governs two nouns, the two nouns are viewed as a single nuance, single unit, and that can often be theologically significant. For example, in Titus 2:13, the blessed hope, the glorious appearing of tu megalu theu kai soteros hemon Jesu Christu, the great God and Savior of us, Jesus Christ. So actually Titus 2:13, as well as 2 Peter 1:1, other texts have a construction known as the Granville-Sharp construction, which actually proves Jesus is God here. So it's saying the great God and Savior is actually Jesus Christ in Titus 2:13, and there's a lot of other texts, numbers of other texts like this as well. Again, that's talked a lot about in second year Greek. If you really want to learn about it now, buy Wallace's Greek Grammar Beyond the Basics. He has a big discussion of it, but otherwise we'll gonna hold off on that for now. But that one article with the two nouns unites them in certain ways, and when it's a Granville-Sharp construction, it identifies them. So Titus 2:13 teaches Jesus Christ is the great God and Savior, and that's really indisputable in Greek. It's very clear. Okay, that's chapter 7. That's chapter 9. And so we've got the workbook exercises, the review of chapters 6 through 9 in your workbook as well. Please remember to do them like a test. We have please translate 1 John 4:1-6, like Mounce has you do after the review, but do it directly from the text receptus. Compare his notes in the workbook, but that way you won't have critical text stuff. So that's what you've got. With that, any questions about that? No? Okay. Well, time is up. We're going to sing, and then we're going to close. So let's sing "Worthy is the Lamb." Da da dum da 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 dum. Worthy, thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power. Stand up, and we'll sing that. Kurie laben ten doxon kai ten timin kai ten dunamin hati suectisas ta panta kai dia ta thelemasu esi kai ectis thesan Oxion estitarnihan ta esphagmenon laben ten dunamin kai pluton kai sophion kai iskun kai timin kai doxon kai eulogion Estu sionas tonionon. Amen. All right, well, 2 Corinthians 13:14 here. Give you the benediction. He charis tu Kyriou Jesu Christou, kai he agape tu theou, kai he koinonia tu hagiounumatos metaponton humon. Amen.